Steven here, Fanatic Perspective. The New York Knicks, after 53 years, have won an NBA championship. That's not fake news. That's not a myth. That is factual. That is reality. The New York Knicks are now your 2026 NBA champions, doing so against the San Antonio Spurs. Big time Spurs fan, been a Spurs fan now right around 30 years. So always tough when your team loses in the championship, especially under the circumstances in which we lost this series. And we will get into that on this video. Knicks win tonight in San Antonio, Game 5, 94-90, defeating the Spurs 4-1. Tap in the comment section wherever you're watching. Just starting out, I am extremely, extremely proud of the San Antonio Spurs team, the organization, big picture. We're going to get into a lot of stuff about tonight's game, and then blow it out for the series, of course, and obviously wrap it with you guys in the comments. But just starting out, right? I am extremely proud of this basketball team. They were projected, I think their over-under was in the low 40s, right? Depending on which site or what the line was. Some had 41, some had 40, as high as 44, right, for the season. And a group of very young guys, 2 rookies in your rotation, Victor Wembanyama coming back from the deep vein thrombosis, which was, life-threatening, missing a lot of time last year, coming back from that, dealing with the calf injury, missing 17 games, all of these factors throughout the season. And this team made it to the Cup championship, lost to the Knicks after they had beaten the Thunder. So the Knicks not only won the NBA Finals, but they also won the NBA Cup in December. But this Spurs team went on that run. I thought they would be a, mid-round playoff team in the semifinals. That was my expectation until February hit. And then the month of February, they go on that crazy run. I think they had only lost one game in March, which was to the Knicks. And then from there, this team goes on to win 62 games. This team goes on to win the Western Conference, defeating 2025 NBA champions Oklahoma City in a Game 7 on their home floor, and made it to this point. And at this point, the finals exposes all, good, bad, and indifferent. And in this finals, we saw the youth finally show up for the San Antonio Spurs, both on the roster and in the coaching staff. The Spurs were severely outcoached in this series by Mike Brown, former Spurs assistant, former Greg Popovich assistant, and it showed heavily. Now, the Knicks team went, 53-29. They did win the Cup. This team was built for the playoffs. I give the Knicks team, I want to be very clear in what I'm saying here. I give the Knicks team and the Knicks organization all the credit in the world. Hell of a basketball team. I've always been a fan of Brunson, McCall Bridges, and Josh Hart. That connection they had at Nova. Those guys are championship winning basketball players. They always have been. It's crazy to have that group together. I wish Dante DiVincenzo could have stayed with them, but that Villanova Knicks group, great job. And then the team that they built around them, making the coaching change. Emphasis on coaching, because this is going to be a question, in my opinion, for San Antonio, of how we really look at the outlook long term. But the Knicks had a lot of success under Tom Thibodeau. The Knicks had defeated Boston. They had playoff success. Jalen Brunson was very successful in the playoffs, but they could not get over the hump in the Eastern Conference. And when they lost that series to the Indiana Pacers last year, they decided to make a coaching change. And Mike Brown had been let go from Sacramento because Sacramento is a terrible franchise and just gives away assets all over the league, both player and coach. But the Knicks made the right change at coach, and in his first season in with New York, they go and win the NBA Cup, they go and win the NBA Finals, they get over all the humps. Now, this was a perfect scenario for the Knicks. I still stand on the setup in the Eastern Conference. I do think that played a role in here, and that's something that I underestimated in my analysis coming into this series. They just didn't have that level of competition that the Spurs face, and I know people are gonna highlight, Anthony Edwards' knee hurt. The Thunder didn't have Jalen Williams and they lost AJ Mitchell, blah, blah, blah. All these Portland didn't have Damian Lillard. The Spurs played a gauntlet in the Western Conference, and it showed in the finals in many ways. It showed in the finals in many ways. That was not the same as playing the Hawks, playing the Sixers with Joel Embiid only really being able to be healthy for the Boston series. And then that Cleveland team, come on. So I still give that Knicks team credit for the fact of how they navigated this series in winning time. The Spurs dominated the first quarter like nobody's business. The Spurs had leads, even with building up margin, the Spurs had big leads in every game, 10-point plus leads in every game. The last 3 games we got up 15, 16. Last, game 4 in Madison Square Garden, the Spurs got up 29 points. And outside of game 3, lost all those games. So the Knicks, and this is where I really get into coaching before we go to the roster. The sense of urgency, the attention to detail, and the push for execution in every winning moment. So sense of urgency. Notice how the Knicks, when shit gets tight and real, whether they make a mistake or not, they're getting the basketball. 50-50 balls. They don't try to dribble a loose ball. They grab the basketball. They are pursuing. They're diving on the floor. They are showing extreme intensity and desperation. The Spurs play at a very, high intensity level as is. That's the Spurs floor. But they don't know how to raise that floor all the time in those crucial moments without facing a lot of anxiety. Whereas I saw from the Knicks didn't always play with hyper push tempo and intensity, but the last 2 minutes to 90 seconds of every quarter, it's like game 7 on both ends of the floor for the New York Knicks. They understood. I just felt like Mike Brown had his pulse on the momentum so well throughout this. Even how he would deploy multiple lineups. It felt like he was managing the situation far better than our on-the-job training head coach in Mitch Johnson. And I want to be very clear. Mitch Johnson did a very good job with this Spurs team throughout the entire season. You won the West. You won 62 games. You led us to the Cup final. You made it to the NBA Finals. However, I felt like Mitch did a way better job of just staying engaged with the team and handling certain situations and adjusting in certain situations during the Minnesota series and the Oklahoma City series. And then all of a sudden, I saw the November, December, January Mitch Johnson in this series. The lack of emphasis, the lack of just seemingly care. It was almost an apathetic nature to having these big leads in the second quarter. If you notice, like pretty much every game except for I think game 4, the Spurs would get demolished within that midway point of the second quarter. Now, when they got their energy back, they normally start out the third quarters pretty well. And some cases they finish second half pretty well. But in that midpoint of the second quarter, when the Knicks coaching staff led by Mike Brown got a good read on how the Spurs were playing. Remember game 1, Wemby started out inexplicably guarding Cat and being the nail on a lot of the high pick and roll, high ball screen stuff. Why, I don't know. And then it took them a while to get to, hey, Wemby should be more of the roamer off of like Josh Hart or OG Anunoby and just kind of floating and playing and then closing on the corners and switching on stuff as needed. But it just seemed like any adjustment we made coming into the game and starting out, once that initial push settled in and things settled in, Mike Brown and their staff would then make their adjustments. And sometimes those adjustments could be, hey, more lineup type things or adjusting the tempo. Maybe we need to have, clearing out ball side and then having Jalen Brunson go one-on-one and starting to get those consistent matchups. Maybe it could be a lineup change like getting Jose Alvarado in the game in some cases to just flip energy. It was easier for OKC in their series because Caruso was so good at early in that series. That was just automatic quick adjustment for Dagnall to just change the temperature in the room. He went to that consistently against the Spurs because the Spurs, again, they play at an intensity level of like an 8 out of 10 out of the gate. And so oftentimes they're blowing up people's first five, but then they don't know how to navigate something once they get any type of margin and just read the room. Today is a great example. The Spurs end up getting up 16 points in the second quarter. 16 points. The Knicks can't even, and the Knicks aren't scoring. But you know who was going to get going at one point was Jalen Brunson. And this is what I'm talking about reading the room. Jalen Brunson hits this is how I'm managing this. With such a young team, you have to micromanage them. You cannot leave these guys out there to their own devices, figuring out everything. I don't think he used a single timeout in the second quarter, Mitch Johnson. I don't know if I only think the Knicks did, and there were TV timeouts or transitions on the fouls. I don't know if Mitch Johnson used a timeout in the second quarter in tonight's game. Seriously. I mean, even down to the last 90 seconds when Wemby, who only had 2 fouls, is not in the game as the half is closing. We ended the half with Luke Cornett on the floor, who's sick. Dylan Harper inexplicably was taken out. And I don't think Dylan Harper got back on the floor until like the 59-second mark. There were so many little intricate details that got missed late in the game. Give you another example before I get back to my mid-second quarter thing. Late in the game, Mike Brown gets a timeout in off of a miss when we should have fouled Mitchell Robinson. It's a 2-point game. Mitchell Robinson's on the court. Put his ass on the free throw line. And we're trying to foul before the rules change in the last minute, so you can't do that. You can't play that foul game anymore. But we don't foul Mitchell Robinson before that point. That should have been an automatic read. I'm looking at my team like, why aren't we fouling Mitchell Robinson right away? And then Mike Brown sees it and calls a timeout and gets his ass off the floor. And then they get over that period where you can't do that anymore. Details. And I'm harping on this right now. Our anger and how we feel will feel differently when we go big picture, months out, all that. I know people love to just only talk about legacy narratives these days and all that type of stuff, but we got to focus on the real-time stuff and appreciate the game. It's not fun to just only talk about legacy and, because Wemby lost his finals, he can't be the GOAT, blah, blah, blah. I want Wemby to be the best Wemby, period. I want him to take lessons, learn from this, improve, get better. But I'll get to the players in a second. My point is this. You can't take things for granted. I would have liked to see the Spurs improve on that throughout the series, and I felt like that was a miss. I can go to bed at night and go and sleep well at peace if we just flat out get beat. But we're trying everything. We're trying different dials. I see him, for example, in that second quarter, getting back, we get up 16. Once Jalen Brunson hits 2 baskets, I'm calling a timeout. Break up the momentum. Mark Dagnall did this in Game 7 when he started realizing that the Spurs were overwhelming them. He was micromanaging the Thunder, and they're a veteran championship team. He was not allowing us to just balloon a lead, and they were at home. And he was calling timeouts. Mitch Johnson, you don't get to take those with you. I don't understand standing there and allowing a lead. They're going immediately on a 10-2 run. Jalen Brunson's getting hot. On top of that, your team offensively is completely out of rhythm. Completely out of rhythm. You're getting very little action out of stuff. And the Knicks are also funneling this. Credit to the Knicks and their defensive strategy. They're saying, "Hey, beat us." Very similar a lot of ways to what OKC did, because all these teams know once we got to this level, the Spurs are very streaky in their shooting. Very streaky in their shooting. So they'll concede a lot of stuff. I mean, think about how many, and we got better threes tonight than this threes we took. I know people are still going to be upset about the shooting. There were several threes where we got a good solid paint touch, driving kick, and we just flat smoke a jumper, right? So let's go to the players. Let's go to the players for tonight. Just for tonight. As well as Stephon Castle played in this series, I felt like there were some learning curves and all that type of stuff. Tonight was a bad night to be bad. I mean, this was his worst game, one of his worst games as a San Antonio Spur. He was bad on both ends. I mean, Jalen Brunson ends up, that's his matchup. Jalen Brunson closes out with 45 points. 45 points from Jalen Brunson. Credit to him. Then on offense, what did he go? 1 for 10. His one was the putback at the very end of the game. He goes 1 for 10. Shot just went cold. 3 or 4 from 6 from the free throw line. Just the confidence wasn't there once he started missing. That was not the same Hooper we saw in New York in the Garden, who was at times carrying us and one of the few people I trusted with the game on the line when shit really got intense. Steph had a rough game. However, De'Aaron Fox, a lot of the goodwill that was built up when he came back in the OKC series, a lot of the goodwill that was built up in that series was sadly lost in the finals. I hate to say this, and I know we got to, again, zoom out, but this is a nasty look going into the offseason because of his contract. I don't ever want to call guys losers or question their what it is, especially because of the injury he was playing on. But he was not competitive in this finals. We didn't even get the Sacramento. I mean, people talking about, and maybe some of that loser mentality or energy came from Sacramento. I don't know, but we didn't get close to that. And I can only blame the injury so much, only because if this series is still going, if we even get the De'Aaron Fox that played at the end of the Thunder series, we didn't even get that guy. I mean, the guy we're talking about single point games where he's playing 37 minutes, 38 minutes, and not only not scoring, but he is ineffective and making some of the worst mistakes in the most crucial moments as a vet. He's supposed to be the grown-up in the room, and I stand on that. I said that last game. And I know I was not blaming him exclusively for the Game 4 loss. I was not. That's a team loss. That's a coaching staff loss. Hear me. I know I clip stuff up and some people only hear certain clips. I get it. But what occurred in this series is eye-opening because he's not a plus defender. And you couple that with the fact that Dylan Harper was our best player tonight, including Victor, overall. Now, Victor, I'll get to Victor here in a second, but Dylan Harper was unbelievable. And was unbelievable all playoffs. He didn't blink. And on most of these other teams, this is how highly I've thought of Dylan Harper coming out of the draft from Rutgers. I had a Cade Cunningham comp on him. Cade Cunningham, who got 2 MVP votes, by the way, and led the Detroit Pistons to the 1 seed in Detroit. That's how highly I think of Dylan Harper, because he's bigger than people realize. He's a big guard. He's got some shit to him. And it stinks because think about having an overqualified, souped up type guy like that still coming off the bench if you're getting the De'Aaron Fox you were supposed to be getting. If you were getting the De'Aaron Fox you were supposed to be getting throughout this series, injury or not, it's not. Hear me. I mean, come on. So there's a lot. There's a lot of things to look at here. I mean, he plays a much more winning brand of basketball. Now he has an X-Man like ability just to get to the cup, unlike anybody I've ever seen. And what was sexy about him coming out of Rutgers was his finishing rate in college was equivalent to Zion at Duke and like Derrick Rose at Memphis. He was in those metrics at Rutgers. Those are things you pay attention to. Those are things you pay attention to. Now, Harper, what he's going to have to work on the offseason is he is already such a gifted scorer and just driving type of guy. He will have to work on more of his traditional playmaking abilities. Will we be able to run more complexity type of offense and sets as he matures and develops? I think he more has the potential to do that. But just becoming a better passer, right? Getting other guys going. Harper's going to be good enough to where he could be that guard that we need for Victor to really maximize on his capabilities as a lob threat, as a big. Because a lot of these bigs, as good as they can be offensively, Victor included, and I think it's time to move to that conversation. As good as they all can be, they are maximized with a great guard. That, I mean, even Hakeem Olajuwon, right? As great as he was, and he was, he ramped offensively just out of this world, and also had the body type for it. But they still had to get guys like Clyde Drexler, Kenny Smith, Sam Cassell, early Sam Cassell, to get over the hump. Vernon Maxwell, guys like that, great guards around him, both scoring and playmaking, to help make his life easier, right? Of where he was getting to. Big Tex, thank you for the super chat. I've just been kind of rolling here. I know this is stream of consciousness talking, and we're already at 20 minutes. I'm going to get to the comments here, but I want to clear my mind in this moment. Again, the Knicks have won a championship for the first time in 53 years. Incredible. And I appreciate you guys tuning in. Thank you. But getting to the Victor stuff, I thought tonight, I'll start with tonight and then we'll go serious out. Tonight, he was incredible defensively to start this basketball game. And Victor's been really, really good starting these games throughout. I think his motor was good. But here's the thing. Here's the trap that was set for us by the Knicks coaching staff. Did you notice how aggressive the Knicks were at attacking Victor and challenging him to start the game, even though it wasn't their own natural offense? That was clearly their game plan. That was really their game plan in this series, but they switched it up. So early in the series, if you notice, that game one, they knew that the Spurs were coming off of a very emotional, very intense series, versus OKC. Very emotional, very intense. So the Knicks came out and they played tempo like crazy. Our easy counter to that was, okay, Harper's going to be really comfortable in that type of game. As soon as we went to Dylan Harper, he got a quick 11. Game one, that flipped the energy there, right? But they wanted the long-term play for the Knicks was getting Victor tired, getting him gassed. And that strategy yielded them great results in this series down the stretch. You saw it in his legs. You saw it in his ability to finish lobs. And the Spurs adjusted too late on how to navigate that. Now, this has been a challenge for the Spurs throughout the playoffs. We did not get the same minutes at all in the non-Wemby minutes that we saw in the regular season that really helped, as opposed to the minutes that we got as we went on later in the playoffs. It became more and more of a challenge. And the Knicks matched up well with us, and they had the personnel to make that even more of a struggle. Here's the reality where we're at with Victor. I am still pleased with everything we saw. This guy led. Okay, now he's the leader of the team. 22 years old. Victor Wembanyama, I think he's going to finish at around 27, 26 points per game, 11 rebounds, all the defense, all of that, right? But this guy led at 22 years old a team to the finals where his point guard went AWOL. His coach participated at a YMCA level, and he had really no support when he wasn't in the game. So he was in a tough spot. He learned some lessons. I think hopefully moving forward, there were some things obviously in his game that were exposed in a louder, atmosphere that had been exposed. Even going back to the Portland series, there's holes in his game. He's 22. He's not there yet with the body or his offensive game. Defensively, what the Knicks did better than any other opponent, though, was really, really taxing him on the back end and really, really taxing him. Because think about it. He acts as not only our defensive anchor, but he's essentially calling the defense on the back end. He's acting like, you guys remember when Kevin Garnett joined the Boston Celtics and was like a true defensive anchor in the paint, but also helping so far on the switches. But he actually had a goon next to him in Perk, which helped. But KG was essentially that anchor for that defense. Kevin Garnett was. That's the aspect that Victor Wembanyama plays basketball in for the Spurs. It is mentally and physically exhausting just to play that way on defense. And the Knicks knew that. So early on, even though they were not, their shift became, hey, let's not get into the track meet stuff because the Spurs are young. That might get Castle going. That's easier for Castle. That's easier than them trying to read stuff in the half court. So the Knicks understood that. But their shift came on attacking Wemby defensively, even if it wasn't productive for them early in the game. Because they knew, hey, we're mentally tough. We can overcome any deficit. We just got to get the big man tired so we can get what we need later in the game. And that strategy yielded beautifully for the Knicks in this series. It did. I texted my buddies early on. I'm like, Victor's getting, he finished with 5 blocks today. He had 3 blocks in the first 6 or 7 minutes of the game. Getting challenged. He got challenged by like Landry Shamet today. He was getting challenged by guards, wings, bigs, didn't matter. But when I saw him, they showed a graphic and he's drenched in sweat and he is breathing hard. I'm like, He's even with him getting more rest and whatnot, it's tougher. I think Cam Johnson said this on his podcast. He's 7'5", and he is expending more energy than anybody else on the court. With all of his responsibilities defensively and offensively. So it takes his legs. You could see it later in the game in his shooting. You could see it later in the game in the free throw line. And you can see it later in the game where he gets, even with his finishing on lobs, him getting pushed off his spots on rebounding, all sorts of things. And then on top of that, you're burning even more energy because you're nervous, anxiety, seasons on the line, all of these factors. So that was exposed. Victor's going to get stronger. Victor's going to get, I think, more of a practical skill set for his size. I think he will understand space better as he moves on and advances in his career. Before we even get to like team needs and all that type of stuff. I'm just talking about Victor Wembanyama right now. He will get to a point, like there's times you can tell, and unfortunately he doesn't get that help from the coaching staff right now. He doesn't. But you can tell there's times where as soon as he puts the ball on the floor, there's no plan. I mean, there was time where he could have had an easy midi 15-foot pull up on Cat. Cat's in a back is in the drop. Anytime these bigs are in the drop, if Victor's really confident on his 2 dribble pull up, that should be an automatic, clean, wide open, uncontested midi jumper for him. But he instead jumped in the air and tries to throw a pass to the corner because he's unsure. In his mind, it's either I take an open three off of a pick and pop or try to take a step back three, or now I got to exhaust all this energy on a live dribble to the rim, to the cup. He will never be an efficient player like that. He's gotta get to that. Now, he doesn't have the body yet to even get to like a LaMarcus Aldridge type efficiency, although I think he can be better from those elbow spots at his size, or even young Dirk. But even like Kevin Durant, as he's gotten older, doesn't dribble as much. He's actually should study older KD of how easily he gets to his spots on 1 to 2 dribble pull-ups. Just understanding space. Like, you don't have to exhaust all of this energy trying to go behind the back, tween, step through. I don't want to ever hear about this brother working out with Jamal Crawford again. Not right now. No, let me. That's me being emotional, and I get that. But I don't want to hear. I need practicality from the brother. And I know some people got on my ass about the curiosity thing. Victor is more. His curiosity is part of his superpower. That's why he is such a unique player. But as his career progresses, if he wants to win, if he wants to be as great as he can be on the offensive side, there are things that he can do in spots on the floor where he can literally be unstoppable from if he has those repetitions. Without even, having a true post-up game. I'm just talking, everything I'm talking about is face-up and just playing with the guards, right? Now, his strength and conditioning and all of that is going to be a big emphasis. Again, he is only 1 year removed from the blood clots. So we got to factor that in as well. And so I think as he continues to go, if he finds that happy medium between, for him, strength-wise, where he's not overwhelmed or anything like that on the blocks and can be competitively strong, he will be an all-time. What he's already done, he's already on pace. We are still ahead of schedule as a franchise and all of that. But there are things that he's just gonna have to fix. Period. Thank you for the super chat again. He said, bro, we need a real power forward. Champagnie can't start. We need Rui Hachimura, Robert Williams from Portland. LeBron, get off the Fox contract. Star Harper, get Bron, blah, blah, blah. All right, so a lot of stuff here. I appreciate the money. We definitely need a 4. This whole positionless basketball stuff is cool, especially if you're older. I mean, the Knicks get away with it to a certain degree because Anunoby can play that spot and rebound and defend at that spot, plus Mikal Bridges' length. But they essentially play 4 wings guards and then the 1 big and Cat. So they play similar to us. You can win that way. The thing, though, that would help Victor right now 100% is would be somebody that else in there, that can take some of that off of him and also still provide plus shooting. Our shooting just wasn't good enough, and we didn't get – I mean, there's a lot of guys that just came up short as this run continued to go on. Julian Champagnie, he's going to leave this game tonight, 14 points, 4 of 8 shooting. And I struggle with that only because there's a lot of good that came from it, and Champagnie's super cheap. Eventually we're going to have to factor in salary here. So Champagnie is definitely one of the people we're riding with. He's just going to have to get better with his defense and competitive strength, and just desperation in certain moments. You can't be too cool for school to dive on the floor and dive on a basketball. The amount of times a ball would roll past him or just not able to get on something, and he's trying to dribble a ball instead of just grabbing the basketball or falling on it. was frustrating. And then on top of that, you could see the anxiety with him when the Knicks forced him to put the ball on the floor and drive. He got ripped a few times. So just skill level has to improve, but the shooting is there. Us making that shift to Champagne is a big reason why we won 60 games. It's a big reason why the Spurs won 62 games this year. Remember, Harrison Barnes was in the starting lineup for much of the year. And when he started going cold on some of the shooting and people spaced us a certain way, we had to move to provide that spacing with the shooting from Champagne. So we're rolling with Champagne. The questions, Dylan Harper, Castle, Wemby, obviously that's your core. The De'Aaron Fox thing is good because before this series, I was like, yo, what are we talking about with De'Aaron? What are we doing? Right? Even with the frustration, because I know he is playing a different role than the role he had in Sacramento. Totally justified, where he was asked to score. But you got to compete, brother. You got to be able to flip that switch with your salary and your age. The fact that the Knicks are getting 45 points from Jalen Brunson in a game like this, and we can't get 15 from De'Aaron. We can't get 15, and he's involved in almost all of these actions. He's involved in all of these sets. It's crazy. That's not good enough. And there's going to be a lot of questions about it. I mean, the Spurs are also going to be a very attractive team for guys that are looking to win in a competitive Western Conference. That's why Oklahoma City's not going anywhere. And they have draft assets to get better, and they will get Jalen Williams and those guys back. They're not going anywhere. But having, a guy that is supposed to be a closer for you, that's supposed to be your lead guard, and the young guys play off of, is tough. It's tough. The Spurs got to look in the mirror on that for sure this offseason. And if they really want to stay 10 toes down on that, because if he doesn't bounce back next year, he becomes almost unmovable. It's also a timing thing. My Spurs choked a fourth. Now, let's talk to the chat here, because some of y'all are starting to say some crazy stuff. I'm gonna work backwards. So of course the Thunder, your Spurs choked in a 4-1 series. Well, your Thunder choked. SGA choked in his series. How about that? Yeah, we choked a bunch of games, and we still whooped your ass a bunch of times. So that's crazy how you can lose 8 out of 12 games to somebody and still talk trash like this to them. Like, I would look crazy right now talking trash to a Knicks. As much as I hate Knicks fans and can't stand them, and they're worse than Thunder fans, I love this Knicks team. Shout out to the Knicks. I want to make this very clear. Shout out to the Knicks team. Again, credit to them. Knicks fans can go to hell as far as I'm concerned. They can go all the way to hell. I know there's a couple good ones in the batch, but for the most part, those people are pieces of shit. And fuck them. They can go to hell as far as I'm concerned. But I would look crazy. And the fan stuff is obvious. It has nothing to do with ball, actually. But when it comes to basketball right now, the Knicks were better than the Spurs. They beat us 2 out of 3 in the regular season. They beat us for the cup. And then we got here and they beat us. I'm always a believer, unless there's some like crazy circumstance. If you win a best of 7 on somebody, you're the better team. If you win the best of 7 on somebody, you're the better team. You're the better team. So it is what it is. But the Knicks team, love their team. Love their coach, obviously. Excellent team. The Mavs are going to regret everything they did. I don't have time to talk about what they threw away, but they starting to look real Sacramento-ish right now. They're lucky they still had that finals run the other day or the other year. That's nasty work. Blue Diamond Jim said Wemby went from golden boy to villain overnight for being a POS. Uh, who cares? And what I mean by that is good for the fake stuff and all the people out there. Were there some plays that were borderline? Did he have some dirty plays in in this playoffs? 100%. There were 5x the energy at him because if people weren't playing him dirty and defending him, look at the scars on on his damn shoulders and the way people have to fight and claw and defend this guy on a consistent basis. And what's funny is this is why NBA social media is A, toxic, and B, just very disingenuous. The narrative from so many people on NBA Twitter was that Victor's too soft and he's not going to be able to handle playoff physicality. Coming into the playoffs, I'm talking about going into the Portland series. That was the narrative. He wouldn't be able to handle playoff physicality. Now all of a sudden he's a bully, he's a villain, he's a this or he's a that. No, I think what he did was he showed you at 22 years old, he's not with the shits. Now, did he do some of these things in a clumsy manner because of his unique size? 100%. Were there some things that he has to clean up still? 100%. But let's not forget that the Spurs conditioned him for 30 to 35 minutes tops of effort. Victor finished this season only averaging 29 minutes per game. Now, a lot of that was attributed to two big factors. Number one was the calf injury. And we've seen what has happened to guys that have suffered calf injuries. Chill out. Number one, the calf injury. We've seen what's happened to guys that have suffered calf injuries recently, even young guys like Halliburton, where it's popped their Achilles. And it's led to Jason Tatum's going through it. Halliburton's going through it. So the Spurs had to manage a lot of that. That's a big one. Number two was the Spurs went on a run in the regular season where they were blowing people out like crazy. And a lot of this first quarter Spurs energy, a lot of teams in the league, there wasn't an opportunity really too many times to get him some of those minutes. I do think looking back, the Spurs should have, once he was really, really healthy from that calf injury, they should have found some of those competitive games where, hey, let's push him over 40 tonight. Let's push him to 38 minutes tonight. Let's push him to 40 minutes tonight. Because in the playoffs, Dwayne Wade has talked about this so many different times. Even playing 38 minutes in the regular season and playing 38 minutes in the playoffs, the game is so much more physical. It is so much more mentally, physically, spiritually taxing on you that it feels like 4 or 5 games played. And then you play a 6-game series in Minnesota. You play a 7-game series against OKC. Several games in that series, the Spurs were shorthanded. Wemby is carrying a lot of that load. He ran out of gas, no doubt about it. He was never conditioned for that. He didn't play his second 40-minute game of the season until the second round or no, I'm sorry, game 1 of Oklahoma City in the Western Conference Finals. Now that also speaks to how good he is, that he can be as efficient as he was in the minutes that he plays. The fact that he finished third in MVP voting and played less than 30 minutes a game, the future's bright. Now, again, they're going to have to ramp him and eventually get him to playing, probably averaging around 34, 30 high-end 35 minutes a game. But in certain moments, ramping him so that he can finish and gain that. But these are lessons learned. I'm going to tell you this, too. This is just my honest opinion. I don't think the Spurs organization was ever truly... I don't think they were truly considering that this would be a finals team. I think they were focused very heavily on beating OKC. I think they really liked that matchup. I think they There's obviously some organic rivalries between them and OKC, and the focus being there because of the ages of those teams. But I truly don't think that the Spurs, organizationally, and when I say this, I say, look at it this way, right? The Thunder, as the defending champs, made a move to get Jarrett McCain, right? So look at the trade deadline activity. We've known, going back to the Cup, that we've lacked a four-man. That's not new. We've known, if you're really a Spurs fan, this is straight hoop talk right now. This is my sport, okay? Straight hoop talk. If you really been dialed in, I'm talking about you're deep in the trenches on the NBA app watching, you know, Spurs versus Hornets games. I'm talking about, you know, Spurs Kings games. Even against some of the bad teams, the Spurs were blowing leads all year. Now they would win the games, but they've been smoking leads all year. This isn't new. They were smoking. They improved and got really hot and did some things, and they were better managing that in the playoffs, which is why I'm disappointed in Mitch, because I thought Mitch coached and did a lot of things management-wise better in the semifinal, Western semis, and the Western Conference Finals. But during the season, the Spurs would smoke leads all the time. All the time. I will say this. If looking back at it, if they thought they had really could have made and I'm talking because, I mean, the trade deadline is when? When's the NBA trade deadline? Let's look that up real quick. I think it was shortly after the All-Star break, right? Because the reason why I'm asking this is before the Spurs went on that crazy run. So it was February 5th. Yep, that's when the Clippers traded Harden to the Cavs. That's when Kuminga got traded. So there was a lot of moves. That's when Jaren Jackson got traded from Memphis. There was a lot of moves at the trade deadline. The Spurs didn't get involved. They kind of just rode out with their team. Because at February 5th, I think if the trade deadline was mid-March or end of March, the Spurs make a move. Because at that point, that's when I started feeling like, I'm like, wait a second, this team can compete and win the West. It was at that point. It was never a full year thing. Whereas the Knicks made their coaching move. Their whole mentality was for this situation. And then when the Eastern Conference opened up, boom, they were off and running. They were off and running. So some of those holes, I think, will be addressed in the offseason. Texas Platinum, what's up, fellas? Revenge Harper and Wemby going to feed families. Oh, yeah, those brothers are going to get better and better. They just got to stay healthy. The only thing that's lurking in the back of my mind, and I want to get rid of this thought, but it's the truth. Nothing's guaranteed, and there's so many examples. There's three big ones that come to mind where we thought young teams like the Spurs would just go off and run the league, and they didn't. And there's also examples of where they did. But the three that come to mind that are glaring are obviously 2012 Oklahoma City. Drew said it. 2012 Oklahoma City, which is what this team will be compared to and resemble, right? Taking out a really good team, kind of a rival in the Western Conference Finals. That 2012 OKC team was down 2-0 to the Spurs and ended up running off 4 in a row. I'll never forget that. I think I was in Jamaica. I was in Jamaica when we lost Game 6. I'll never forget watching that game. That OKC team with Harden coming off the bench, Russell Westbrook, Kevin Durant, Serge Ibaka, they were a wagon at that point. But at that time, KD was 23 years old, 23. Westbrook was 22, and Harden was 21, 22. And everybody, I mean, you hear it on the broad. If you go back and watch those finals, those games, you hear, when they lost to the Heat, people were like, "Oh, the West is theirs," blah blah blah. But that veteran Spurs team, with Kawhi's ascension, And some of the subtle moves that RC and Pop made ended up winning the West the next 2 years. And OKC never got back. And then a couple, not even a year later, Harden's gone. That group's cooked. So that's the first example. The second one, going back, 95 Magic. 95 Magic. Young Shaq, Phenom, wins the East. They beat the Bulls when Jordan came back from baseball. Was still in baseball shape. They beat the Bulls, I think, in 6 games. You have an all-NBA Penny Harper. You have a young Nick Anderson, Horace Grant. Like, all those guys on that Magic team, 95 Magic. They get swept by the Rockets. They never made it back. A lot of it due to injury. And then, obviously, Shaq's free agency goes to the Los Angeles Lakers. Now, the Spurs won't be in that situation where they lose Victor Wembanyama. So, I don't have as many comparisons to 95 Magic, other than it's more of the injury circumstances that occur with Penny Hardaway. But the other team that a lot of people, this is just, if you really either older remember this particular team, or if you look at your basketball history. But this team, in some ways, also reminds me of and this is the one that I hope we don't end up like. This Spurs team also in some ways reminds me of the 1986 Houston Rockets. That 1986 Houston Rockets team, Hakeem Olajuwon in year 2. Okay? And Ralph Sampson was in year 3 or 4. And in this model, that's a healthy 7'3", 7'4" Ralph Sampson, just like Wemby in a lot of ways. That's probably the closest comp of where Wemby is right now. Hopefully Wemby ascends to the Kareem level. But right now, I'd say he's actually more of a Ralph Sampson type. But when that Rockets team was healthy, they took out the defending champion Los Angeles Lakers, I think in like 6 games. I think they took out the Lakers in 6 games and won the West. And they played one of the greatest teams ever, which was the 86 Celtics, where they had Bill Walton coming off the bench. That 86 Celtics team was a juggernaut. And they lost to the Celtics in 6 games. But you're thinking, wow, the Lakers are in trouble, right? And in that point in the 80s, young Hakeem, who was a number 1 overall pick, Ralph Sampson, who was a number 1 overall pick, like that particular group, you're thinking this team's also going to come back. And Ralph, the injuries hit. I think he ended up in Golden State. Think about guys like, I think they ended up having like Sleepy Floyd and some of those guys. But the Rockets never got back until 10 years later when Hakeem was way older. Way older. But that Rockets team took out the defending champion Los Angeles Lakers. Kareem, Magic, Worthy, all those guys. Took them out. And I'm sure at that time, I don't know what the media narrative was back I wasn't born yet, but I'm sure they were thinking that wasn't going to be their last run. So here's the good news, though, if you're a Spurs fan, like myself. We need to be mindful of that and not think that shit is guaranteed, but we need to keep our focus on maintaining the arms race with teams like Oklahoma City and improving our overall roster. Things are going to happen that are out of our control, and things are also going to happen that are going to go in our favor. You need a little bit of luck. Spurs didn't have that. Some of this is just the bounce of the ball too, right? Wemby hits that shot in game 2 where he doesn't go back iron. He nails that shot. He's already a legend and goated for hitting a game winner there. If OG misses there's so many woulda, coulda, shouldas, of course, but it's tough. But I think what you do have from this situation, if you're the Spurs, is a lot more clarity on what you do have, what you don't have, and what you need to get. Now, I personally need to see, and this is something, unfortunately, that we won't see until the playoffs next year. Although there's some little things you could see in the regular season. I need to see better coaching tactically. And I'm concerned. I'm concerned about the Spurs coaching moving forward. Here's why. Sean Sweeney took the Orlando Magic head coaching job. He was essentially our defensive coordinator. And for many parts of this run, defense wasn't the issue. So Sean Sweeney's heading to the Orlando Magic. We lose him. I know our regular season coaching as well as our player development is outstanding. You don't get here without strong day-to-day development. This is credit I'm giving to Mitch and the crew. You don't get to this level, you don't win the West with kids without the in-season development, without the mental toughness that they've gotten. These guys play their asses off for Mitch. They clearly don't quit. We saw two of the most catastrophic losses we've ever seen in the NBA Finals happen in the same week to this team. And they still came out with delusional confidence and played hard as shit and played defensively. They just ran out of gas and then got out-schemed, outgunned by the Knicks in winning time, as Magic Johnson says, in winning time. That's clear. That's clear. But where I get concerned is at what point does this basketball team that is advancing so quickly and growing at such a rate, at some point, shout out to my wife, Brianna, because she brought this up, at what point have they outgrown Mitch? Or can Mitch show growth himself? He's only 39 years old. We have seen young coaches grow. But I'm going to just keep it a buck with y'all. Is he Scotty Brooks or is he Eric Spoelstra? Is Mitch Johnson Scotty Brooks or is he Eric Spoelstra? Because the Thunder fell into this same problem. Now, we must also remember, you're not going to have the most sophisticated offense and all this type of stuff when you have very, very young players. So we're not going to be able to run 2014 Spurs offense with this group just off of they don't have that. They haven't seen enough hoop, all that. Our more complicated stuff is actually more on the defensive side and focus. You can tell with what we run, we are not complex offensively. However, the lack of adjustments, creativity, recognizing lineups, as well as our out of timeout stuff is just lacking. And then we have sheer confusion and doubt end of game scenarios. The Spurs were pretty shitty end of game all playoffs. The Spurs were pretty shitty end of game, just period. Like, we either lucked into some stuff or some people made some YOLO ISO buckets. That was that, right? Like, even Wemby shot in game one. Like, that was more in transition, go, go, go. Which is part of the reason why Mitch, my buddy texted me and was like, I feel like sometimes he doesn't call timeouts because he doesn't even know what to say or what he wants to drop himself. So he knows we're better off just going sometimes. I mean, you look at the end of the Minnesota game, I think that was game one, when we got that Champagne jumper, which was a good look, but he didn't call timeout then. We didn't call timeout when Wemby had the back, the ball that he threw to Castle in game two of the finals against the Knicks. These were consistent problems. Consistent. These have been, our end of game stuff has been shaky. We are really good at blowing people out and just overwhelming them because of our guard play, athleticism, and just what we're able to do. We're a high-level AAU team with crazy talent and a generational player in the middle. That's how we hoop. And we play and we defend. We're a high-level AAU team. But when it comes to tactical stuff, getting organized, understanding what you want to run, the Knicks, this is no matter make or miss, Brunson's getting to that right side elbow area, and he's either making his read in terms of getting to his midi step back, ducking into the lane, step through floater, or kick to either Bridges or Anobi in the for the corner three. That is their bread and butter, and they get to that shit no matter what in the most crucial moments. The Spurs, the thing we probably get to the most is Fox off of pick and roll downhill, but he can't score anymore for whatever reason. Mr. Clutch ain't clutch anymore. So that became a problem. Outside of outside of the one he hit in game 3 for us to get the one win. So that'll be looked at. I do think that the Spurs just can't be bullish and stubborn though, and not look at the Fox thing, because those are the type of things that will start to mess up the locker room too. It is what it is. You can't, when you're not competing defensively and you're the one making the low basketball IQ mistakes in the most crucial moments, but you're also the old head, you're Unk, but Unk has less poise and composure than the 20-year-old that I already said earlier on has maybe a Cade Cunningham archetype, then we gotta, go get Trey Murphy or somebody. Flip that shit. We need to let's start plugging some holes. And then like Big Tech said earlier, go get me a real 4-man next to Victor. And let's rock. Now we also have to have some uncomfortable conversations about one Keldon Johnson. And it sucks because Vassell ran out of steam in this series. He was good, not great. I thought Vassell through the Western Conference playoffs was playing great basketball. He was good in the finals, but there was too many times where he had some tough fouls and didn't provide the offensive juice to help pick things up consistently. These are guys, and the reason why I'm talking about Vassell and Keldon is because they held it down when we were, a 60-loss team, young players. Vassell was drafted in 2021. Keldon's been with us since 2018, 2019. These are guys that just haven't played playoff basketball, but they're veteran players for all intents and purposes. And this is a good example of why just because you've averaged 20 points per game for a whole season doesn't mean that you're actually a scorer or hooper like that. And it's not shade to them because Vassell is in a different lane than Keldon. Let me make that very clear. But I'm talking about both of them because they were the ones that stuck around through all of this crazy period. But what was kind of crushing was Vassell, when he was at one point one of our number 1, number 2 offensive options, he wasn't able to tap back into that. De'Aaron Fox wasn't able to tap back into when he was the number 1 option scoring wise in Sacramento. Like they weren't able to flip that switch when we needed to play that way. So, they've become what they've become. But Vassell still gives me plus 3-and-D aspects and traits, and I think he was really competitive. On top of the rebounding, I think he was just really, really competitive. So I'm fine with what we've gotten from him. The biggest thing with him is just staying healthy long term because he's had some health challenges. But overall, I think this playoffs was a plus for Devin Vassell, 100%. Keldon Johnson, plus 17 tonight, plus 14, I think, last game. He was a disaster class in the playoffs and the finals, but weirdly was effective the last 2 games. And then this is when Mitch doesn't play him as much. This is what I talk about where the coach really is on the job training and just not reading the room. Because Keldon fell off, though. He did. You're the 6th man of the year, and he's going to end as one of the most fraudulent 6th man of the year we've ever seen. Absolutely just... We want to talk about lights too bright and just not rising to the occasion. This is a good example, right? This is a guy that averaged 23 points per game at one point, and he showed such a little skill level and just over aggression in so many of his reads. And the lights too bright thing applies to just overall shooting. Again, now he was fine, better tonight. Made 2 threes, 2 big 3s for us tonight. But uncontrolled drives, throwing stuff up. And early on, I was arguing with people on Twitter. They were like, hey, it's a length problem, length problem, length problem. I'm like, yeah, to a degree. But not every matchup in every round can be a length problem either. And it's not like he hasn't played against length in the NBA. It's a different environment, and now it's more it's a shot making league. Let's just keep it there. It's a shot making league. It's a good decision making league. When you get in the playoff basketball is so different from regular season basketball, and the finals is so different from even playoff intensity. And that's a lesson learned. And that is something I will own. I underestimated that from my assessment with this team, because this team was just doing impossible things all year. So I'm like, why not? And as good as the Knicks team had been, I did have questions about their strength of schedule, if you will, in the Eastern Conference Finals, and just their overall pressure and composure on them at this stage. But they're older guys who had yet not been to the finals, but they were battle tested enough to keep their composure, and just a smarter basketball team in terms of reading the scouting report. The Keldon stuff, right? Kelvin's only move is a shoulder through to the chest to get a shot at the rim, blah, 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 right? Good, great comment here. That's also understanding the scouting report. When I need to pull up and maybe get to my floater, is that in your bag? If you're such a one-dimensional player, well, when teams read the scouting report on you and really dial it in, because that's the thing we have to continue to emphasize. In playoff games, I'm only playing you. I'm only focusing on you. In regular season, one night, in November, we might be working on something. We might not really install a whole bunch of stuff for that opponent. Or we might get to the 5th bullet point on the scouting report, but we just go out there and hoop in the regular season. In the playoffs, every detail is analyzed. If you have a slight tick on your left eye by game 2, they're going to figure that out. That might be a tell. That's how on they ask they are with every coach on these benches is studying to crazy degrees on every single tendency. And with Victor, it was his conditioning and getting him flustered. And I think people started getting him playing out of character, right? Like what he did, I mean, technically that probably was a flagrant on him on his closeout with Brunson, like just getting him out of rhythm, right? And getting him that way. With Castle, people started to realize he does, foul, try to get foul, especially going to the rim, especially when he's driving left, and he can be ripped or you can pull the chair on him. And then early on in the Portland series, if anybody remembers the Portland series, remember how they played him? They were standing at the free throw line and they were conceding jumpers and trying to mess with his confidence. So that was the scouting report on him. Fox, people were just putting a wing on him. Like the Knicks just live with OG on him with Fox. And they realize, oh, this guy doesn't have the ability to just blow by everybody like he used to. And he's an inconsistent, streaky shooter, so we'll live with that. So when you start getting into and then on the flip side, the Spurs youth, inexperience, and just poor coaching, they did not do a good enough job, specifically in this series, of really hammering the mismatches that were available to them on the other end of the court. Jalen Brunson was not forced to work hard enough defensively in this series for how porous of a defender he can be. Now, there's some things he does that I think are underrated in terms of drawing charges, getting in the passing lanes, and making some timely steals, and just playing off of the right shoulder sometimes. But for the most part, he's, when you get him in the only person that really took advantage of their matchup on Jalen Brunson was Dylan Harper in terms of targeting him, right? Like, Wemby don't get to rest. on certain ends. And here's the thing, I want because again we talking hoop. Here's another thing for guys, and where I say we just were getting by on talent in AAU mindset, the switching. Let's talk about that. In order to get switches on demand, Drew, you got to be good at setting screens. And this has been a weakness for the Spurs. This is not even just has been. This is a weakness for the Spurs. Effectively setting screens. People are able to do that to us more effectively because they set better screens. This is something starting with Victor Wembanyama. If Victor can scale up so much just off of learning, and again, it's awkward with him because of how big he is, but Victor is a poor screen setter. Anytime he sets a good screen and he rolls, he gets a dunk. He either gets a dunk or they get crazy gravity for everything else. But he's a poor screener. Half the time he's trying to screens with his hands. He has his hands extended, or he's on somebody's hip in an awkward way. Like the secret sauce, the super secret sauce with Golden State. I'm talking peak GSW, peak Golden State Warriors, peak, was their ability to screen for Steph and Clay and Durant. I mean, think back even before they got Katie, like Andrew Bogut. Andrew Bogut was probably the best screen setter in the league, to the point where a lot of people, what they thought he was doing was illegal, right? Like it was some borderline stuff. But those guys, those bigs, him and Draymond would create Maurice Spates, Draymond Green, Maurice Spates. Think about the names I'm saying right now. Go back and think about Golden State. It started with their ability to set good, hard, consistent screens. So you're either getting crazy space for your shooters or you're getting the switch you want. We can't get switches on demand. We can get them early with some of the ghost screens and stuff, but when people really start locking in and you want to start really hunting people end of quarter, end of game, you have to be able to set good, solid screens. And we already play with only one big. So having Castle, having the screen, like we're just not gonna. We have a lot of guard to guard screens. So that's where again a good 4-man that can have some physicality will help a ton. Will help a ton, and it's also coaching. It's also coaching. This is a good comment by Drew. They extend their hands a lot. That's a habit that they never got out of. Champagny, all season, Champagny would get at least once a game would pick up a foul on a screen. Now, sometimes it's also the guard because the guard doesn't wait for it to properly set. But Champagny is not a good screener. Not as good as they can be better at what they do just off of stuff like that alone. To force those mismatches, to clear out a side and make Jalen Brunson play one-on-one with somebody. That's how, even if that right there makes your offense a little bit more efficient in what you want to get. That alone. But just tying a bow on all this, Victor has to become more of an inside-out player. I think everybody knows that. To me, his superpower offensively will come in the mid-range with his. I don't think he's going to get there body-wise and 1 year strength-wise to just be standing in the paint. And I don't know if that's the right move for him long-term health-wise. I do think he will be a jump-shooting big man and should be a jump-shooting big man for his career. I just think he needs to be a more efficient and more confident jump-shooting big man from all areas of the floor. Excuse me, not just being an inconsistent jump-shooting big man from 3. And he needs to become a good roll man. Lobs, stuff from the dunker spot, just any area where he's given space, you can see his processing sometimes is too slow, which impacts his ability as a playmaker to get some of the easy assist that he can get. He's developing. He's already made big strides this year from last year and last year from the year before. Victor is in his. Don't listen to all the nonsense on that people are going to say about him. I just watched a 22-year-old again lead this team to the finals. He is the best defensive player I've ever seen. Does all these things in spades. The strength and conditioning will improve to where he's not gassing out. I think the team is going to be mindful of that, as well as keeping his body healthy. But where he will become just, oh my God, this is unreal, is elbow type stuff, the Dirk, LaMarcus Aldridge, even Kevin Durant type stuff where he, any type of space, it's an automatic midi. There's no contest for that. And that will also keep him healthy because it's less contact. Once he gets that, it's a wrap. Once he gets that, it's an absolute wrap. But they got to get Harper ramped up as a playmaker for others. He has proven he's a playmaker. The sky's the limit for Dylan Harper. I think that's the one asset out of all of this that is going to have the positive PR and all of that. Again, I don't care about PR like that because Victor's not dialed into social media or anything, and I think he is just going to continue to develop and be in the right circles and the right people. But a veteran can help. And I think the Spurs are going to be very attractive in free agency for an older vet. I know some of the names getting thrown around right now. But yeah, social media casuals. There's a lot of people that that don't watch hoop until the finals. If that's you, respectfully, I'm not going to take your opinion too seriously when it comes to big picture on people like Victor Wembanyama when we've been watching them the whole season and what they were to what they are now. But there are some things and holes we got to work on to get over the hump and win. But Harper's the guy you leave here where you just have that smile on your face like, damn, we're lucky. We're really, really lucky. I'm gonna read a few more comments and then we'll wrap up here. We got to be smart, free agency, in those holes. The bench was a letdown. Luke Cornett battled tonight. He didn't have the series that I thought he could have had. OKC was going to be a tough series for him, but I thought Luke, we never really saw the Luke that we got in the first couple rounds of the playoffs. It was a bit unfortunate because he actually played well versus the Knicks in the regular season. Like, if you go back and watch the Cup game and all that, that was when Wemby was coming off. That was his first game back from the calf injury, and he was on a minutes restriction coming off the bench. Luke Cornett started the NBA Cup championship. And so to not be able to get anything out of him is crazy. Now, again, he was sick, but the other thing I noticed that is a struggle for Luke and some guys on this team is they have weak hands with the basketball. Champagne has this problem too, where they bobble the basketball a lot. They don't ever seem to catch it clean and be able to. And that's not. I don't know if that's even something you can fix like that, but that's just a sour trait for Cornette that gets more exposed as physicality enhances in games like this. As things get tighter, palms get sweatier. That's definitely exposed. Victor has very strong hands. Problem with Victor is when the fatigue sets in and his legs go. That's when he's not able. Because the rebounding really wasn't an issue for him until the end of the game. The Mitchell Robinson rebound was a killer, but that's something that's going to be replayed in his. On top of all the other things, right? The castle pass, the missed free throws in the Garden, a bunch of adversity, and things that we failed at in this series. Failure occurred. The job was not finished. Failure occurred in this series, and there were things that just didn't go our way that they're going to have to learn from. However, the Mitchell Robinson offensive rebound that led to another opportunity. Fortunately, that wasn't the end all be all for the Spurs. They did still have an opportunity after that. But that Mitchell Robinson rebound where he literally gets pushed under the rim, that's something he's gonna have to look at and live with all offseason. And that's a tape if I'm staff, if I'm his trainer or whatnot. Hey, when we're in year 4, going to year 4, 23 years old, big fella, we hey, and you're not getting shoved around like that earlier. I'm saying when you're tired. When you're tired. Though now they know what it feels like. Now they know the level you got to dig to. The level you got to get to. This team showed nothing but heart. That's why we should be very encouraged. I know I talked about the examples of teams that didn't get over the hump. But the Thunder had to set back their first run, and they got over the hump the second year. Remember, they got Luka, and then Luka and Kyrie got them up out of there in 5 games back in 2023 when they went to the finals versus Boston. Luka and them got them up out of there quickly. So that's one example of a team that on their next run learned from some of those mistakes. That's when they went and got an Isaiah Hartenstein, and their front office acted accordingly, and with some luck as well, they were able to win a championship. So the Thunder are a good example there. Again, this is our first run as a core group together with Victor and Dylan and Castle, Champagny, the whole crew. This is our first run. And so if you think about it this way, the Thunder's first run, the stuff that got exposed with us now, that was exposed in the Western Conference semis with them. And they were an awesome team that year. And that helped them get over the hump the following season. For the Spurs, the problem is that Thunder team is coming back too. We'll see what the Lakers do. I got to hold out to see what happens with this Lakers team before I start saying that they're going to be contenders. With Bron and them talking about Austin Reeves, him signing with, potential Eastern Conference suitors. Got to see what happens with the Lakers. But right now, in the West, it's Spurs, Thunder, and then there's some margin depending on what happens with other rosters. But in our second run, there are clear things where it's like, okay, the front office can tweak this and this to where we are clearly in a better position come playoffs if we're health willing to where we can easily get past some of these things. Easily. The West is tough, but if you get out of the West next year, like this Knicks team was built to win now, right now. Because we'll see what Boston does. Like a lot of these people are going to try to duck to the East because there's more paths to the finals in the East. We'll see what Detroit does. Right? There's a lot of different avenues, a lot of ways things can shake out. But the Spurs, where it's going to be tough because even coming into the playoffs, I know Spurs fans and people on Reddit and Twitter and all these different platforms have been skeptical of De'Aaron Fox, even as an all-star this year. But I don't think anybody was like, hey, we should move off. Like, I think we were not expecting him to have 7 points on 3 for 15 shooting in the finals. I mean, if we go to De'Aaron Fox's finals output, he averaged 12 points, shot 34%, 25% from 3 in this series, and had very critical mistakes, turnovers, all sorts of things. Yeah, OKC's getting ready to deal with the second apron stuff too. They're going to be more top heavy. They're going to have to move off of, like, Lou Dort's not going to be able to come back. Now, they learned that Case and Wallace can hoop, but OKC is not going to be as deep as they were, but they're going to be able to circumvent that with their draft picks. I do think that they're going to be, what scares me with them is seeing how stuff has played out now, and y'all walk with me on this. What scares me with OKC is if they make the move to get into the top, I'll say the top three of the draft. I'll say the top three of the draft. If they're able to somehow make a move into the top three of the draft and get Cam Boozer, that's a chess move. And the reason why I'm saying this is because there are certain things that Cam Boozer can do, even as a rookie, that would help them immediately next to Chet and that whole crew in the front court, plus as an offensive hub with his passing and decision making. That kid has crazy processing ability of reading the defense. And that would be a team as well where he could hide his deficiencies, as a, athletically, laterally, and all those type of things. That would be the chess piece that I think could be potentially Davis and save them some money because he'd be on a rookie deal. Is if OKC is somehow able to trade into the top three of the draft and get a Cam Boozer. Because he is going to be day one really good in rebounding, strength stuff, passing. Everything and defensively, he's not as bad as people think he is. So that would be one where I would be like, okay, that's a chess move right there. Because the Spurs could certainly use somebody like that. Think about it. That's like 6'9", 6'10", a little bit of a diverse skill set, but has those broad shoulders, toughness, and can just help set screens, but just be physical and be a little bit of a lead blocker for our guards and free up some of that gunk with Wemby that he has to fight through all the time. Down there as the lone big, that would change things tremendously and strengthen our bench, the options we have on our bench. So the Spurs are going to have to make some decisions and figure out. I know what they're saying right now with Fox, and the contract is the contract. It's going to be interesting. Fox is what? Clutch Sports? I think he's a Rich Paul client. So that's the other. There's going to be some politics that go on here. But whatever happens, even if Fox is still on this basketball team next year, that cannot slow down Dylan Harper's development. You have to treat Dylan Harper, and this shouldn't have to be said since he was the number 2 pick in the draft, but you have to treat Dylan Harper as if he is a future offensive hub for you. And then it should be looked at like a potential Kobe Shaq situation between him and Victor. And then Castle just continues to do his thing in a sense because Castle can play multiple positions. He's just got to be a smarter player. He's got dog in him all day long. Tonight, I don't know what happened tonight with Castle. I have no idea what happened tonight. As well as he competed all playoffs and the clutch stuff. And I know tonight, like I said, it was a bad night to have a bad night for Stephon Castle. And it definitely cost us on both ends. Because Brunson, and maybe Steph at some point mentally, physically, probably more so mentally, has run out of gas because the foul stuff just became so much of an issue for him. But if you think about it, this kid went from guarding. This is why I say this: the path. You can't just look at the teams; you also have to look at the matchups. So from the first round, Stephon Castle was pretty much the primary defender on Denny Avdia. All-star, 6'8", 6'9", offensive hub for Portland, downhill, very physical, probably the most efficient guy in the league this season, I believe, again, to the free throw line. That was his first matchup that he had to deal with, was Denny Avdia. Then he goes to Anthony Edwards. And for all the haters out there that want to say, Anthony Edwards wasn't 100%, but he was damn sure very effective in that series. He was still Ant, okay? Especially after game 1. I know the minutes and all that. By the end of that series, his explosiveness wasn't there, but everywhere else, the skill level, he's still Anthony Edwards. So he goes from Denny to dealing with Anthony Edwards. to defending the back-to-back MVP and SGA to Brunson. And Knicks fans kept saying, oh, look, they were justified in terms of there hasn't been a Brunson game. There hasn't been a Brunson game. But it wasn't just because Brunson was missing shots. It had a lot to do with Stephon Castle, his three-quarter on-ball pressure, his length, his strength, his tenacity. He is a dog defensively. Stephon Castle's a dog defensively. So Brunson's inefficiencies in this series up until tonight, I think Stephon Castle still had a lot to do with that. But tonight, oh, for sure, he cooked him. Brunson cooked him tonight. Like late in the game, there was a point, and I think Richard Jefferson or Tim Legler said on the broadcast where they were like, damn, you just broke contain like so quickly that we weren't even able to get to the cup to contest, and that includes Wemby. And that had not happened to Stephon Castle, not to that degree. It was late in the fourth quarter tonight. And that's when I realized, I'm like, damn, he's really struggling. He's really, really struggling. But that's a guy who was the rookie of the year just last season, only 21 years old. He has everything you need to be a all-star, two-way great player in this league. Everything, the mental is there, the body is there, his shot mechanics are there. I think he just needs to be more mentally locked in and mature upstairs. Because even his shot mechanic, he shot the ball from the free throw line a lot better in the playoff. He went the opposite of Keldon. Keldon went from an 80% free throw shooter to like damn near like 50% in the finals. That's lights too bright. Whereas Castle was pretty much like a 70% free throw shooter, 70, 71, 72%. And he was like almost, tonight was the first night where he was like missing consistent free throws, but like he was in the 80s. There were times where the three-point shot looked really good, especially off the catch. So he's going to have to develop his game. That's another guy that can get wherever he wants in the mid-range as well. But the thing with the difference between Castle and Harper is Castle's live dribble to get to the cup and get by people is just not as crafty and effective and natural as Dylan Harper. And that is a trait that is so valuable especially in this type of playoffs. That is so valuable. Like Castle can work, if he's on a big, he can get by it, but he doesn't have the handle and everything to just consistently get by somebody. So I do think that's something that the Spurs need to naturally adjust to. Stephon Castle for most of this season was pretty much our lead ball handler on top of being a lead defensive assignment guy on the team's best perimeter player. He was doing a lot of lifting on that side. I think that role needs to transition to Dylan Harper next season as being the primary initiator, or at least starting with that next year and seeing where you get with it, and then letting those two play off of each other. I think there's a world where they can easily coexist, at least until contracts get crazy, and a world where Victor can become a lot more effective in his mid-range, and we move. Wemby is soft. Obvious troll. We'll leave it at that. It's funny how people say he's soft and he's in the finals. That's crazy. Let me see here. Look at a couple more comments. Yeah, Champagne's not. I don't think he's ever going to be great off the dribble, but neither was Danny Green. Where I want him to get to, where Danny got to, is Danny was a really good defender, and Champagne right now is not always the most competitive defender. He's a good defensive rebounder, which does earn him minutes. Like Champagne is a really good defensive rebounder, but he doesn't always have competitive mentality where he's able to sit in the chair defensively and make good reads. He's just not. It's fun. They said Dirk and Powell were soft in 06 and 08. And what's crazy, too, is like Dirk was what? It wasn't Dirk. No, the following year was his MVP year. right? When they lost to the Warriors in the first round after the '06 finals. But even if you think about it, right? Dirk was what, like 99, 2000 draft, around that time he came in the league. Dirk was already in year 7 or something when he got to the finals. So the Spurs are very, very, very much ahead of schedule. Let's not. There's got to be. I think perspective will continue to set in as we get more removed from this and process this. The hack a Shack on Mitchell Robinson. At some point, you can't. It becomes like a. I don't know what exactly the rule is, but you can't play hack a Shack like inside, I think, 2 minutes. I forgot what the rule is, but there's a rule for that. But there was a situation, I think, around the 250 mark or something, where the team missed and they should have immediately fouled Mitchell Robinson because it still would have been a normal one. And they didn't, and they missed it. And then Mike Brown gets the timeout in. So, Devon, good question. This is going to be the talk of the offseason. And it's going to be a weird place because I do think everybody's aware of the injury he suffered in the Minnesota series when Io fell on his leg. I think that was like game 4 of the Minnesota series. So that's going to be something that does factor into his ineffectiveness. However, it's also now just become a fit, right? Considering what you know you now have in Castle and Castle and Harper alone, where does he fit? How does he fit? What's his role at that salary? Because that salary can get you another type of player in his age range, and at that salary, that can be, fill a hole, whether it's a stretch 4 or a wing. And now, I think that's another video that needs to be made and a conversation that just needs to be had of what are our options, exploring that. But right now, the Spurs have just been consistent of how they want to approach this. I hope that they're not stubborn, though, and this messes them up. Because there's some teams that could use a De'Aaron Fox, and if he's healthy, he can still be a very good player. No doubt about it. But on this team, with how we play with this coach, I have questions and concerns. I'll say this too. I'm gonna go couple more minutes and we'll wrap up. I'll say this too. I'm more worried about the coach. Personally, I'm gonna just be blunt right now. If Mike Brown was the coach of the Spurs in this series and not Mitch, the Spurs win this series in 4 or 5 games, easy. If Mike Brown was coaching San Antonio, especially since he's running a lot of our legacy stuff, Golden State stuff, if you just flip the coaches, the Spurs win in 4 or 5 games. I truly believe that. It is if you don't agree with me, then ask yourself, why did the Knicks make their coaching change? A group of veterans, Cat been there now, Brunson been there, Bridges been there, Hart's been there, OG has been there, all vets. They couldn't get over the hump with the previous coach. The previous coach, Thibodeau, has always been a good regular season coach, push the throttle, effort, energy, fight, but always tactically a step behind, especially on the offense when it really matters in June. If he gets to June. Typically it's May for him. And they made the tweak to Mike Brown, who's won championships in Golden State, won championships in the Spurs, led a 60-win group 20 years ago, young Bron, to the final. Like Mike Brown led Sacramento like the beam to the playoffs. If he was coaching the Spurs, if I'll put it, if Mike Brown was coaching the Spurs and Mitch Johnson was coaching the Knicks aren't even in the finals. The Spurs probably playing Cleveland. Think about that. That's why I'm like, as much as we are focusing on De'Aaron Fox, he has a massive contract that we're going to have to figure something out with. No doubt about it. But a good coach knows how to navigate those situations a lot better. We were in position to win every single game we played in this series, even with De'Aaron Fox playing as poorly as he did. It still came down to coaching. This man did not call a timeout for the whole second quarter and just was a spectator with his arms folded. As a lead, just leads evaporate in front of his face. He does nothing. He acted like it was November. No respect for momentum. No respect for the opponent. If you respect the opponent, once you see Jaylen Brown say a couple, no, nah, bro. We got to change the energy. We got to switch this up. Quentin, thank you for the super chat. Absolutely not. Good day, sir. Thank you for the donations. At minimum, my biggest concern with the Spurs is coaching. Period. That is one of the most consistent examples in NBA history. So we talk about young teams getting over the hump. Most recent example, Oklahoma City Thunder. Most recent example. I would argue the Spurs, when Greg Popovich first came, remember Bob Hill was a very good coach in the 90s. Spurs went to David Robinson won an MVP under him. They fired him. And then when Pop took over, Pop also had, some issues with ascending as a coach early on. There were some things that some of the Spurs meltdowns are also on him. Like nobody's perfect. Nobody's perfect. But those were more one-off moments, not a whole series. With Mitch, this has been everything we saw tonight has been a problem every game in this series. It was nothing new. Nothing new. Nothing new. Stop making excuses, Quentin. The Spurs were hurt. We also missed games in that series. We still won while you guys had home court your MVP. And this goes for the annoying Oklahoma City fans as well as as well as Knicks fans. Be very careful with how you guys talk about Victor Wembanyama because you cannot have it both ways. And what I mean by that is this. You cannot tell me how overrated the player is. You cannot tell me that this guy is just tall or this guy is just this when you are fighting for your fucking life against that player. Which one is it? If you want credit for beating us or competing against us, then you have to acknowledge that the player is good. If not, then why are you struggling against somebody that you're claiming is mid? If you're claiming that Victor is mid, or you're claiming that Victor is soft, or you're claiming that Victor is only tall, all of these things, then why is he in the finals and you're sitting at home? And if you're OKC and you're complaining about injuries, Jalen Williams only played 39 games this season. Y'all knew all season y'all won a whole 60 games and had the best record in the league, and he barely played this year. And AJ Mitchell was in Alcatraz the first 3 games versus the Spurs. And when Oklahoma City was 100,000% healthy in game 1, you lost when De'Aaron Fox was not even on the court and they had no grown-up handling the basketball, and we had like 20 turnovers in that game. Steph Castle had 11 turnovers in game 1. Oklahoma City was 100% healthy in game 1 and lost. while the Spurs were down, guys. So I just ripped that argument to shreds, that narrative to shreds. OKC is very, very good, but you cannot claim that Wemby is overrated and all of this, but you want credit for beating us. Like it doesn't, you can't have it both ways. You cannot have it both ways. That is not a good faith argument. I give Oklahoma City credit for beating them because at the end of the day, the person that's cheeks is Chet Holmgren, who was an all NBA player and just signed a massive extension and had 4 points in game 7. But it's not about you guys tonight. Anyway, all these guys are buns, but yet you lost to them, Quinn. Anyway, Chris Paul. If we had Chris Paul on this roster, I think just Chris Paul this year would help so much. Would have helped so much, especially in half-court sets, all sorts of stuff. Would have helped tremendously. Mitch, no, here's the thing. I'm going to say this too, Matthew. I'm worried about coaching too, but Mitch had to be doing something right to get this far. And I said this earlier, and please hear me. And I'm gonna give you guys some examples. And like when it comes to history and stuff, basketball is like my number one sport when it comes to like just like ball knowledge, all that shit. Seriously. Mitch has already proven to be a great regular season coach and resource. I'm sorry, coach and developer. Regular season, and what I mean by that is regular season is almost a different sport, guys. It's how do you handle the travel, back-to-backs, when guys are sitting out, load management, what are we working on? Getting Carter Bryant ramped up, realizing Jeremy Sohan's probably going to not be a part of this. So we got to get Carter Bryant ramped up. Getting Dylan Harper in the mix. Remember, Dylan Harper, starting the season, had the hamstring issue. So he also had to work through injury very early in the year. So Mitch navigating all of these things, plus getting them defensively accountable, playing with effort and energy every single night. It's the main reason why Keldon Johnson won Sixth Man of the Year, was just off of hustle tonics. So in the regular season, that can get you really, really far. But that's why I asked the question, and those of you who know ball know what I'm talking about. Are you Scotty Brooks or are you Eric Spoelstra? Because both guys struggled as young coaches early on. But the difference became Scotty Brooks ultimately became the guy that would help young teams. But then when the team outgrew him, he never had the tactical expertise, the X and O ability to get a team over the hump and make all the right moves. Whereas Eric Spoelstra became one of the best at that, even after LeBron. I mean, think about how many teams that Eric Spoelstra has gotten to the finals twice with Jimmy Butler and Bam. Like, just off of sheer management of his team and his resources and lineup control, all of these things in crunch time moments. So if you really believe that Mitch Johnson can develop into that type of coach, or he is on the track to develop into an Eric Spoelstra type of coach, and he just needed this experience, he needed to grow from this, then yes, you write it out long term. But we have to be careful. We are in the Wemby era now. We have a generational talent who needs guidance and coaching and help from the sideline. 100%. We have seen this with so many players in NBA history. Go back to Magic Johnson, Paul Westhead. They won a title. They won a title. Now, was Magic being a brat and all this type of stuff? We can get into that. But ultimately, to get to Showtime Lakers and what they became of the 80s, they had to make the move to Pat Riley. They had to make the move to Pat Riley, more of a wartime coach. You know, you hear my favorite, one of my favorite movies, and just movie series is The Godfather. But when Michael decided to take Tom Hagen out, Tom Hagen had been in the consigliere role, and they used to say Tom Hagen is a peacetime consigliere, aka regular season hoops. That's the guy that can manage stuff peacetime, and peacetime's important. Both are important, right? We don't get here without the in-season development. We don't get here without the good habits put into place, the competitiveness, locking in, forming good vibes on a young team in the locker room. There's a lot of young teams that don't even get to this stage. I can give you a bunch of examples of that. But a peacetime consigliere is very, very important. But a wartime consigliere, when Michael said, Godfather 1, Vito, who was the original Godfather, steps into the like. There are certain moments where you need that tactical mindset, and that's something that Michael understood in that movie because Michael was a former soldier too. But that's the type of thinking we got to do. Michael Jordan, Chicago Bulls. Michael Jordan, Chicago Bulls. Doug Collins. Is this a Doug Collins situation? Remember, Michael liked Doug Collins. Doug let him do whatever he want. It reminds me of Mitch and Wemby a little bit because before Pop had the stroke, Mitch was really Wemby's coach. Like they were connected. That was his guy. So the Bulls ended up realizing when they kept losing to Detroit and so much was on Michael's plate and their offense would get disjointed and the Pistons would turn off enough faucets to win the series at the very end. They couldn't get out the East. And they made a shift, and it didn't happen overnight. It took a couple years. It did not happen overnight. But Michael won an MVP, won defensive play, he won all these accolades, averaged 37 points per game, a whole bit. But when they made the shift to Phil Jackson, Tex Winter coming in, installing the triangle offense, and adding structure, adding mindset, adding championship mentality, they moved to a wartime coach. They moved to a wartime aspect. They realize we have the maturity. We've built up. These guys know how to navigate the regular season. He's not here for that. He's here to win a championship. And that's one of the hardest things to realize in any sport. Those of you who follow me for football content, same thing. We see this all the time with coaches. Can you coach in the playoffs versus non-conference versus your conference versus the playoffs and getting through and how to navigate that? Do you have the right pieces in place? Do you have the right structure in place? Because everybody's giving 100%. Everybody's selling out. Everybody's emptying the tank. The Spurs learned. Now, they didn't learn until they got to the finals, but they learned you can't just outwork this problem. The Knicks are going to play hard too. They're going to be intense too. You're not just going to overwhelm them like you did these other teams in the Western Conference. And that's a lesson that I think a lot of us needed to be reminded of as Spurs fans. I grew up in wartime Spurs hoops. We won now 5 out of 7 but we had won 5 out of 6 championships. So, but we've also been on the wrong end of a lot of stuff over the years. That Game 4 loss is up there with the Derek Fisher loss, 0.4. It's up there with the Ray Allen shot in Game 6, 2013 finals. It's up there with the Manu Ginobili foul on Dirk Nowitzki in Game 7 in 2006. Or else the Spurs might three-peat in that middle 2000s part. We'll never know because he fouled Dirk and they lose in overtime in Game 7 to the Mavericks. Horrible moments. Now, the game 4 moment was a slow burn, which is why that one's always going to hurt more, because coming back 2-2 would have just been the vibe. Coming back 2-2 and winning both in New York, man. But when we lost that 29-point lead and lost that game, man, that's tough. And the reason why, I know it's crazy, it's like, man, why are we even talking about Mitch Johnson? You know, he shouldn't even, I'm not saying he should be fired or we need to make a coaching change for the 2026-2027 season. What I am saying is, don't waste people's opportunity to win, and in the climate that we're in, trying to wait and see if you're unsure if he's a championship head coach, if you're able to go get an actual coach that you know can get you over the hump. Don't waste those opportunities, because we saw that was a major reason why we came up short against the New York Knicks in this series, in my opinion. Even with Wemby's holes in his game and conditioning challenges, even with De'Aaron Fox's nonsense, even with the shortcomings of the bench, the Spurs were in position to win all five of these games. And there were horrendous tactical mistakes, basic coaching stuff. I can't live with you not calling timeouts. I can't live with you not trying to break momentum. I can't live with you getting to game. It wasn't until game 5 where we even were running sets where Dylan Harper at least is the one closing or has the ball in his hand. And I know he came up short on a couple layups, but at least that's better. He's still getting to the cup, and it's better action than what we were getting before. It took him 5 games to get to that. It took him 5 games. Think about that. To realize, should probably be Harper closing. Like, Harper was hooping first half of game 1 and then wasn't even in the closing set at the end of the game and had legs. Tonight, at least he was gassed because he had been hooping. So not even being able to make proper reads, whereas the Knicks, sometimes it was Alvarado that they needed. Other times it was Shamet, Josh Hart. Like, they were interchangeable on that 5th piece. You knew, until tonight with Cat's foul trouble, you knew Cat, Brunson, Bridges, and OG would be on the floor. But he was very, very, that 5th person, Mike Brown really went on the hot hand of that particular game to close with. That's coaching. That's coaching. To not even know who your best 5 are to close games. Del Harris, great example. Del Harris went, 61-21 with Eddie Jones, Shaq, Kobe, and Nick Van Exel. I think they had 4 All-Stars. And they got swept out of the playoffs. Swept. By us, I think. I think that was us. There was other, no, what's that? No, we swept them in 99. 98, that was 98 when they had that group. And they got swept by Utah. My bad. They got swept by the Utah Jazz. That was the Malone, Stockton, Hornacek group. Rest in peace, Jerry Sloan. It was that crew. Then the next year, 99, we beat the Lakers in that playoff run. But that Del Harris group, great regular season team, obviously. Kobe made the All-Star team off the bench, whole bit. But when they got in the playoffs and they were going against Jerry Sloan, it got real obvious that they needed a coach to handle this situation. Del Harris is a great example. Great example. This happens all the time. Warriors and Mark Jackson, another great example. Steph Curry, I tell people this all the time. People always get upset about the Mark Jackson thing and why was he fired? Was it basketball? Was it not? Blah, blah, blah. He did his job and established the habits, and he established how to win in the regular season, like just teaching them how to win, period. But when it time, they don't become peak GSW. If not, that's where Kerr was needed. Absolutely, Steve Kerr was smart enough to, move off of David Lee to Draymond, make him really the decision hub in their offense, and have the updated action of free flowing ball movement. Whereas Mark Jackson was playing Stephen Curry as a traditional point guard like he was Chris Paul. If you look at Stephen Curry's assist and usage rate before Steve Kerr, he was already still great, but there was another reason why he was accruing all these injuries on his ankles and all these the challenges he had. But when they moved to that flow state offense and Curry was in between being a dynamic playmaker but also running off the ball, and you have Clay, that's where the coach was so beneficial of unlocking those things. Yeah, that's why it is ridiculous that Draymond talks about Steve Kerr the way he does. Absolutely, like right now. Like Draymond, I don't even know how many years he plays in the league if not for what Kerr did for him and how he was used and allowing him to be such a great decision maker, such a great screener, and just unlocking that Golden State Warriors offense. And then also, Draymond became one of the greatest defenders ever as well. So coaching, I mean, there's so many examples, guys. So many examples. Doug Collins to Phil Jackson, Westhead to Pat Riley, David Blatt to Tyronn Lue for Cleveland. That mattered. Getting Phil Jackson in LA from Del Harris. What OKC has in Dagnall now, they have a champion. That's a guy who's already proven I thought Dagnall coached a hell of a series, even in the Western Conference Final. At least when they lost to us, I felt like he did everything he did. He played every hand he could out of his lineup. I felt like he didn't waste. There was nothing that was wasted. There was no stone left unturned. I feel like with this Spurs situation, there's a lot of questions. There's a lot of stones left unturned. Game 1, second half, Dylan Harper not closing. That's a stone left unturned. The 29-point game, some of you guys are going to remember this. The 29-point game, game 4, not putting Dylan Harper in the game when Stephon Castle picked up, I believe, his 4th foul early in the third quarter. I think we started off the half with Stephon Castle picking up his 4th foul, and Mitch goes to Keldon over Harper. That's bad coaching, in my opinion. That is lack of that's not thinking to kill this team right now. That's not thinking to how do I exploit matchups and advantages. That's just not thinking. Avery Johnson to Rick Carlisle is a great one. Dwayne Casey to Nick Nurse, great. Agreed. The Spurs can't wait on this. In my opinion, health willing, there is pressure on Mitch Johnson next year's playoffs. I don't care what's going on. I at least need to, if it's unfortunate, but if we had lost in Game 7, I would feel probably better about Mitch than I do today. In this, I think he because De'Aaron gonna get paid regardless. De'Aaron gonna get paid regardless, and it's gonna be a question of what type of player can we get back and what picks do we got to give up and how much are we going for this thing? But the Mitch thing is going to be interesting because that's Wemby is going to have to sign off on it. And he's going to have to understand because they're going to have to talk to Victor too. And Victor's going to have to be in, which I think he will be, but Victor's going to have to be in alignment with what they want to do, which I think is obviously going to be to run it back. And were there periods in these games where the players let down Mitch? I'm not blaming him for everything, but I do think that we win this series if we have a coach that's just at Mike Brown's level. I really do. That is my biggest concern by far is Mitch Johnson, not even De'Aaron Fox. Because I think De'Aaron Fox's contract still gives you options on how you want to move. And if you keep him, that's on you. And then, a good coach can still work around that. A good coach can still work around that. But, yeah. Decisions got to be... No, personnel decisions matter too. That's a good point. The Harden, paying Ibaka, right? Man. Yeah, somebody will take Fox's contract. Especially with the three-way trades. Certain things like, shit. Brooklyn's trying to make a move for Austin Reeves. Right? Like, you can move Fox's contract for Michael Porter Jr. and some other stuff and flip money. I'm just saying, like, whether it's somebody like that, whether it's, Trey Murphy, like there's gonna be options out there if that's the route they choose. And then on top of that, like people say we need the versatile 6'11" power forward, all that. We also got to consider again free agency. We got to do a separate video where we really look at the free agent people available because there's guys out there that even we played against this playoff run that may come available that could immediately make us better and patch up some of the obvious holes that we have immediately. I wish KD on this team would. I think the only thing is I think he picked the wrong horse, and I know he was traded and all that type of stuff, but he definitely picked the wrong horse with Houston. Anyway, tough spot tonight, but the Spurs, yes, Drew, the Spurs are going to be a very attractive team for veteran players. Very attractive team. Ignore the Wemby discourse. It's going to get nasty. But I'm glad we're already here with that. Let's get that out the way. Because, it was never going to be sunshine and rainbows. It's now all or nothing with any of these guys. That's why the social media analysis from people that really... A lot of these people only watch TikTok highlights or read box scores. They don't actually watch hoop or understand hoop and what it takes. I'm really in this shit hoop-wise. Like, really looking at lineups, matchups, all that shit. He's going to be fine. He is going to be... if this is the first run and these are the conversations we're having, man... Somebody asked me about Bron. It depends on what. It depends on where we go. It depends on where we go. Quentin, context here, bro. He said anybody. Well, obviously, anybody with weight will push him. Look at his frame. Anybody with weight will push him around. Yeah, and he was third in MVP, won 62 games, and had us 3 games away from winning a championship. And he's a baby. So that's not going to be the same case when he's 24, 25, 26 years old. That's just going to come with time. Um, he that's this is just growing pain. That's the case. That was the case for Kevin Durant early on. I've been watching Kevin Durant since I was 16 years old. He grew up in my area. I mean, he couldn't lift, literally couldn't lift a 185-pound bench press. So some of this stuff is just gonna. He doesn't have his grown man body yet. That's not even admitting if that's not a forever problem. Is my point. That's not a forever problem. He is already. It's not about gaining weight. It's about gaining strength and understanding how where he can leverage that strength with his unique body size, because he's never going to be able to be a grinder in the paint, which is why you have to put somebody next to him to do some of that stuff. He's never going to be a grinder because he'll rack up injuries. At his length, that shouldn't be what he's doing. But we already know he can be the defensive anchor that is all world. Look, I mean, still till the end of the game, look where the Knicks were taking shots, right? He still impacts every decision everybody makes on the defensive end alone. That alone is invaluable. The conditioning will come. His strength will come. This is an issue that Kevin Garnett had. I used to watch Kevin Garnett when he was in Minnesota early on. He used to get pushed around all the time. By the time he got older, it was MVP Kevin Garnett in 2004. He still had a similar frame, but he was wiry strong. A lot more strength, right? But we got to have the personnel to help Victor. See, Cat has had a healthy frame and added weight. It took years for Cat to get to this point. What you don't want to do is add too much or mess him up, and then it becomes like an Anthony Davis type situation, which could be a hindrance. I don't think Victor hasn't shown to have injury issues like that, though. He had the calf thing, and he had the blood clot, which is not even related to, traditional big injuries, right? So he's shown already to take care of his body. That's why I also say if we can get him closer to a modern day Kareem type, where he's more of a finesse big. Even David Robinson. Remember, David Robinson dominated from the mid area with a lot of his mid range. For as big as he looked and all that, David Robinson was more of a face up big than he ever was out of the post. It's just that people look at his body and they're like, "Oh, that guy has all these muscles." He played out. He played really in space. Victor needs to be a guy that plays in space to be what he is. But when it comes to rebounding, all that, you can help him with getting some guys next to him. So let me finish on the Bron thing, and then I'll really be done. How much does Bron want to make? Because I feel like till he leaves, he's not going to do like a Michael Jordan Wizards thing where he's not taking salary or whatever. And he's not going to. I feel like Bron's still going to want to make $50 million a year. And that's not going to work for us. The more important thing is this is Victor's team. Victor's the leader on the team. That's why I'm like, we're in a unique situation. He is literally the leader of the Spurs and led them to winning the West outright for year one. If Bron comes here, what happens in the locker? Is Bron coming here to be a consigliere for him? Right? Is he here because if he's here to do that and then be the complimentary hoops role and not take on crazy salary, I'm here for it. It'll be a circus because of what Bron commands and all of that. But he clearly solves a lot of problems and makes us we would be the favorites. Even with Bron at 42 years old next season, we load manage him. We just load manage him all year and then just have him ready to go for the playoffs and operating in that role. Sure. Sure. But that would I don't know if that's realistic. I think personally LeBron's going to go to Golden State. I think that's where he ends up. I think Steve Kerr, there's some things going on. I think Steve Kerr resigning for 2 years. I just think that the Golden State Warriors, their play at the end of Steph's career, if they can get past the rivalry that they have with Bron through the 2010s, I think Bron goes to Golden State. I think they try to do Expendables Warriors, a whole like literally an NBA version of the Expendables. Other people have talked about this. People that are in the league and know. I think that's the move. I think that's where they go. I think they go make an Expendables Warriors team with Curry, I think Draymond. If Bron's there, I think Draymond would stay. Sign a bunch of old heads. They would probably at that point you probably figure out how to get Clay back from Dallas. Why? What does he need to stay in Dallas for? And just make a full blown Expendables roster under Steve Kerr, and they try to run it back one last time with all old heads because Kerr and them clearly don't like coaching young guys. Look at Jordan Poole. Look at Jonathan Kuminga. You know, and then the only one that's even productive for them right now is Pods, it seems. But they don't really like messing with the young guys over there. So I feel like I feel like Brown wants to stay in California. I think it's either that or he goes back to Cleveland. And does he want to do that? Does he want to end his career in Cleveland? Go back to the Eastern Conference. I don't see, but I also don't see him playing with James Harden. I purposely omitted Wiseman because Wiseman was just a disappointment all through and through. I don't know if they could have done anything with Wiseman. Looking back at it, they should have picked. I mean, it's always woulda, coulda, shoulda, but looking back at it, Halliburton is probably the guy that would have. I'm not even gonna say LaMelo Ball because I don't know if he would have been serious enough to be with them. I think they would have. I think he would have got yeeted like Lonzo did. Harden's contract is crazy. Cleveland right now has the most salary in the league. Cleveland Cavaliers have the most salary in the league. Anyway, blocked by Cornette. We got to end on that one. It was a fun season. Probably, I would say, as a Spurs fan, this was the funnest not end to end season. This was definitely the funnest regular season I've had as a Spurs fan. All of the Duncan years were always heavy expectations. We were always the Duncan years, and those teams were never high flying up and down, blah blah blah. Like this Spurs group was just so exciting to watch them figure stuff out and just overwhelm teams with just athleticism, passion, vibes, and just learning the game on the fly. And it was so much fun. It was so much fun this year. And I mean, from Duncan's rookie year to when he retired, and this is why Duncan is just one of the greatest athletes of all time, in my opinion, is for almost 20 years, 19 years he played, the Spurs were literally a championship contender every single season. He was a part of the Spurs. From his rookie season, when he was All NBA first team, to when he retired and walked off that floor in Oklahoma City when we lost to OKC in 2016. The Spurs were always a championship contender every single season. Going into the playoffs, they were a contender. Now, we obviously know we had the 1 year where we lost the first round of Memphis, blah, blah, blah. There were years where we dropped the ball in the second round, but we were always contending for the championship. That was always the expectation. And there were times where the regular season, especially as those guys got older, where we did a lot of we kind of were the ones that started load managing, let's be honest. So those are the teams that made me what I am. But in terms of just an end-to-end regular season, man, this year's team, nobody had these kids winning 62 games this year. No. No. Nobody had these kids winning the West this year. No. Not before the season started. Not coming into this season. Absolutely not. And it really didn't set in fully in terms of expectations changing until March. End of February, March is when it was like, man, the Spurs are a contender for real. That's when those expectations shifted quickly. And that's why we have to be careful on, even myself right now, I'm still reacting emotionally. It's the night my team lost in the finals. But it's taking a even further step back. Not being too overreactionary on even the recency bias of the playoffs and the finals. I'm that way with the coach because I've seen too many examples of NBA history where you either got it or you don't as a coach. But when it comes to the roster overall and how things, there's tweaks and whatnot, just taking a step back and having broader perspective. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting. If Braun goes to the Warriors, we probably don't beat them. They're going to have to stay healthy, and that's also going to depend on what roster changes we make. And again, the media narrative, like this team lost. Don't get it twisted. They lost this series on youth and experience, but I am not going to back down from people saying, "Oh, they were overconfident. Oh, they shouldn't have been saying this." That confidence is the delusion that they had that got them to 62 wins. I appreciate them not switching up on the big stage. They needed to learn how to finish games. That confidence is why they were starting out hot every game. That confidence is why they still were able to come back and win a game in Madison Square Garden in Game 3 after one of the most boneheaded historic mistakes we've ever seen in Game 2. So I'm not moving off of that. And another reason I'm not moving off of that is this team has been complimentary of the Knicks in the media, especially them having to do additional media in the finals, which none of them were used to. But having to do all of the extra media through this finals, they have been complimentary of the Knicks. The media and influencers and content creators are clipping certain things that get said out of a 10-minute conversation, a 15-minute conversation, and now it's, oh, Wemby's arrogant. But there's, like, he literally was talking about his matchup versus Karl Anthony Towns and how good Karl Anthony Towns is. You don't see those clips out there. Unless you're watching the whole media session or you go look up everything in context. I'm just saying this for the fan talk because the players don't care about this shit. But I don't have a problem with Stephon Castle saying we're going to go win these games. I don't. Like, that is this, that, don't switch up. Get better, learn, and adjust on the fly in the games. But that confidence is why the Spurs are the Spurs. And people being sensitive to that or whatever, that's just the hot take, social media, clickbait culture we live in right now. Period. That being said, I'm going to head out. This is probably one of the longest lives I've ever done, but it's always go Spurs go. It's always go Spurs go. This team, I do believe, will be back with vengeance next season, but the organization has to lock in and understand that we are now in the contending era. The same way we were with Tim Duncan, we are no longer rebuilding and trying to find stuff. Use those draft picks. Take advantage of things now while we are in this second apron NBA, while we still have guys on rookie contracts. The Spurs must be aggressive now. We allowed this thing to play out, see where they could get to, but they came up 3 games short of winning a championship. Go Spurs, go. Appreciate y'all.